So good day to everyone. Welcome to this pivotal webinar presented by the United Nations Standing Committee of the International Federation for Business and Professional Women. My name is Jenny Almaco. I have the pleasure of moderating this session today, and we will be talking about the vital topic of harmonizing ethical AI or artificial intelligence. So today, of course, we stand at the crossroads of technological advancement, but also about ethical responsibility, where the intersection of artificial intelligence and gender equality presents both challenges, but also opportunities. So the significance of this discussion, especially in the context of women's empowerment, cannot be overstated. So as we delve into the world of AI, it becomes increasingly clear that these technologies are not just tools, they are reflections of our values, our biases, and societal norms. And the way that AI is designed, developed, and deployed can either perpetuate existing gender inequalities or pave the way for a more equitable future. So as we embark on this journey together, let us remember that the path to ethical AI is not just about algorithms and data. Inherently, it's about people. It's about ensuring that women's voices are heard and their perspectives are integrated at every stage of AI development. So let us engage in this conversation with open minds and a shared commitment to building a future where AI not only advances our technological capabilities, but also upholds our highest ethical standards and promotes gender equality. And speaking about gender equality, I am very pleased to introduce to you the president of the International Federation of Business and Professional Women. She started as a historian, but now she brings with her all of the voices of women around the world and magnifying these voices, making sure that we are at the forefront of making the world a better place. So I give her the room now. Dr. Catherine Boshart, president of the International Federation and Business and Professional Women. The room is yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jenny. Good day, everybody. I'm so pleased to see you all and to have such a huge participation all around the world. That is really, I think, probably a first for one of our webinars. You know, usually legal frameworks limp a little bit behind the social developments and come after. But I think with AI, it's really an important step that we have to think of the positive and the negative effects, the gender biases that could be reproduced. And I think it's very, very important that we bring all these topics into the frameworks and take care of it. I think none of us can now imagine what AI at the end can do. I recently heard our extraordinary ambassador to the UN, who was especially there for working on the AI legal framework in the UN in Geneva. And he was just showing us a picture which was overwhelming. And I think I'm from an older generation, and it's even more difficult for us. So even I was always, let's say, prone, computer prone. I loved it, and I started very, very early out when probably most of you were still in their kids' shoes. But it is really a dimension that we have problems to envision. And I'm very, very glad that we have now Dr. Professor Fabricio Bertini from Minas Gerais University in Brazil here to explain his work and what it takes to provide a good legal framework for IE. I wish you all a great afternoon. Thank you very much for your participation.
Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Catherine Boshart, and thank you for continuously leading us in these discussions, and it's amazing how you are always able to update yourself, with these discussions, especially and more in an intergenerational matter. And this is really something inspirational for us. And at this point, I'd also would like to share the room with the Vice President for UN of the International Federation of Business and Professional Women, Chularat Toiting Israngkool na Ayutthaya, who has been leading us also in these discussions, most especially for the Commission on the Status of Women, but also in other issues, especially on addressing the Sustainable Development Goals. And she is the reason why we are actually gathered here today. So Chularat, thank you so much for joining us today, and the room is of course yours.
Thank you, Dr. Jenny. You are a great moderator. Thank you so much. Welcome, everyone, and good day to everyone for all over the world. Today we have 5 continents. I'm delighted to have you join our important webinar today, and your participating is the key to making this session informative and dynamic. Let's make the most of the opportunity to learn and engage. And thank you for all panelists. If you're not here today, we not be able to understand about AI and law of AI. So thank you for our all participating and for your being here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And thank you for bringing us all together. I mean, you've done such a great job, gathering all these people from different regions. So we are very excited with the discussion. So for those of you who are joining us, you can see in your the bottom part of your screen, there is a Q&A box, and it's there where you can send your questions either to of course, our esteemed professor right now, or also in general, if you have questions that's directed to the panelists or also of BPW. So if you have questions, please use that. And then after this session, we will also be sharing the video. Our colleague Ursula will be making sure that this is packaged very well, so you can share it also to your friends and your family and your workmates, because indeed it is a very interesting topic that we all have to be a part of. So please don't worry about that. And of course, the presentations that will be given today and also documents that you will find useful, we will also be sharing after the session. So for now, just relax, get comfortable. And now it is my great honor and immense anticipation that I introduce our main speaker for today's webinar, Professor Fabricio Bertini Pasquot Polido. Professor Polido stands at the forefront of the intersection between technology and also law and ethics, and is renowned for his profound insights and groundbreaking contributions in these fields. Professor Polido's illustrious career is marked by this relentless pursuit of knowledge, but also a deep commitment to the responsible advancement of technology in our society. His expertise, especially, of course, in artificial intelligence, has not only shaped academic discourse, and he is continuously, really creating this discourse as well. He was just telling us that he's about to write an article about artificial intelligence, and we are eagerly anticipating this. But his work also has significantly influenced policy and practice on a global scale. So as we delve into the topic of harmonizing ethical AI, there is no one better suited to guide this conversation than Professor Polido. So his insights definitely will shed light on the nuances of this crucial subject, and of course, inspire us to envision a future where technology serves us the greater good of all humanity, irrespective of gender. So please join me in warmly welcome Professor Fabricio Bertini Pasquot Polido to the room. Thank you, Professor, for joining us, and the room is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Jenny. It's so kind presentation that you made with me, and I would be very, I would say, embarrassed if I don't cope with the main achieving expectations of this audience. And I would like to greet all the audience with a good day, and also our dear President, Dr. Catherine Boschart, and also our Vice Chularat Toiting na Ayutthaya, which, by the way, is a city where I have the chance to visit when I was in Thailand And that was one of the most magical places that I ever been in my life. So just to mention this importance of this gathering that we have now. So I'm very glad first to share some of my recent contributions in terms of scholarly work. And this contribution is basically made by the fact that I'm son, a very inspiring woman that unfortunately passed away last year. And also I belong to a huge, vibrant community coming from the global south, which is basically the Brazilian community of lawyers and scholars, new generation, and also being part of LGBT community. So I don't know if I could, in a way, summarize all the concerns that the women's, particularly a large women community, would have in terms of touching this topic, artificial intelligence, which is transversal. It's not only about technologies, because it's a very transversal topic, and also because artificial intelligence took the place of where we stand, where we are, and where we are just going to. And this is a very important initial question, apart from the topic of the presentation today, because talking about harmonizing ethical AI would presuppose or require a knowledge about what is behind the new trends on harmonization, and also how ethical AI would be a part of the new national and international legislation onwards. So basically, this is a very important, I would say, assumption that we have to start with. So just to focus on the presentation, my idea when I was discussing with previously with Toiting and other organizations in this topic, and also to share some contributions that I could make in this initial session. My idea was just to focus on the critical intersection between legal regulatory patterns in artificial intelligence with diversity, inclusion, and also gender equality at global and domestic levels. So the main claim of this intersection between law, or international domestic law, and artificial intelligence was to focus on diversity, inclusion, and equality at global and domestic level. And no matter what, the most, I would say, able and competent audience to discuss those issues would be those made by women, by LGBT, by Black people, by indigenous people, by marginalized communities, because they will feel themselves the effects of bias and discriminatory patterns in artificial intelligence. And for a main fact that artificial intelligence and machine learning patterns will just reproduce the same inequalities that historically affected our societies across the globe in very different regions. Algorithms will reflect discrimination and will replicate those discriminations through computer programs and by digital platforms. And also, of course, the same algorithm bias that could be underlying computer programs will perpetuate prejudices against those particular social groups, which are, for example, the women's groups, large women's groups that could be also affected by the way how pervasive AI will govern our lives and bodies, and assuming that also that new technologies and emerging technologies like AI applications will have some sort of effect over our lives and bodies and control our bodies also, which is very important for this discussion. So the idea of the presentation, which will generate a new paper in the next months,
is related to a context. I always like to work with contexts in the legal research, because law, context, and reality are together to understand how those layers overlap and interact. It's a very important assumption for the work in the academy at the scholarly level. So the context is easy to understand. It's easy. Why? Because we experience, we feel how it works. The rise of artificial intelligence in the last decades, and also the bias, discriminatory trends that artificial intelligence can replicate, are good examples of how those biases and discriminatory patterns in AI and by AI systems will also affect the way how we behave ourselves, the way how we experience new things, and how we interact with the other humans, and also objects, and also computer systems, autonomous entities, which is basically what is behind artificial intelligence. So we are just not interacting with bots or virtual assistants, or we are interacting with robots, because this is not only what artificial intelligence is about. We are interacting with a very sophisticated layer of programming, and also human programming, by means the use of artificial intelligence. And not only this innocent message that the global technology industry wanted to share or pass to us, that the technology will learn with humans, and artificial intelligence will learn with humans, and therefore the technological outputs of, or results of, artificial intelligence are based on human behaviors. And so this is not only this, I would say, simplistic view of what is AI. So context is very important, and also to check on the cases that we so far have. Legal framework is important because I'm also international lawyer, and in focusing on technology, it's a very field of my research from since the past 20 years, since I was finishing my master's thesis, and then my doctoral thesis at the University of São Paulo, where I got my degree, and then afterwards my postdoc research stays in various institutions and so on. And my concern with technologies was behind what international law faced during the 19th century with intellectual property, the new communication means, like, you know, all the movement and the vibrant community that was emerging in the end of the 19th century. Perhaps of the most influence of my mother, that was a historian professor, and then my passion with history also was behind what happened in the 19th century with international law, because all the world was very anxious about the velocity, the speed of the changes at that time, particularly with the Industrial Revolution, and also the most important fora in Europe, particularly after the Industrial Revolution, where the technology changes and the scientific revolution took place. And that's why there was this kind of anxiety, but also fear about what would be the future with those technological innovations, and also that changed the way how humankind would behave, no matter what happened afterwards, the wars and the horrors of the use of technology with that. So we just have a very good example in history how emerging technologies could affect the humankind. So it's not new, the main concern. And so we are experiencing the same with these very fuzzy words, and also all the noise behind artificial intelligence. So legal framework is important to react, and also to make it very different in terms of regulatory frameworks and international standards are about. And patterns, because we are talking about norm setting and legal patterns, and how those patterns will change also the way how legal rules are produced and how law is enforced with artificial intelligence intersection. And then what I am also contending that is necessary, no matter what level, whether domestic or international, that legislators and international drafters, negotiators at the international level will have to be very concerned about the centrality of diversity, inclusion, and gender equality in the way how AI legislations and AI normative instruments will be developed. Because in the end of the day, what we are talking and discussing is the way how those instruments in artificial intelligence, for example, the EU AI Act or the Brazilian Bill on Artificial Intelligence, or the relevant instruments adopted by the United Nations and UNESCO, for example, in the framework in the last years, and very recently also the adoption of very important international standards, which I would focus also in the presentation, and these strategies, which are very important to encourage diversity, to encourage inclusionary practices, to encourage also the elimination of any kind of discriminatory or biased approach by AI against those marginalized communities, minorities, and also women community. That's the contribution can be adaptable also to the discourse of where the empowerment and enforcement of women's rights in international level and domestic level will be in the future when related to artificial intelligence regulation. So it's very important from the legal point of view, and also concerns that AI new regulatory patterns and AI-related legal instruments, laws, regulations, global treaties or multilateral treaties, is that they have to include those main overarching goals that are already in international law. For example, elimination of any kind of discrimination against women that came from the very leading United Nations Convention. And this has to be reflected in the way how legislators and also international drafters will look into this particular topic in the future. No matter what, this is very important, because we will see in the presentation that context the rise of AI and the cases that we also have reported are very, very sensitive to this particular claim that international law, domestic legal systems have to be very cautionary in terms of adopting instruments or legal instruments, and also including those main overarching concerned goals. For example, to eradicate and eliminate discrimination, positive, negative, express or implicit discrimination, which can be reproduced by the algorithms, and in the end of the day, the way how the main AI applications are used in the society. So this is a very first provocation in the terms of how we are teasing this topic and warming this topic. And this is true that it's not only a hot topic today. In these days, in the last months, for example, which the growing use of generative artificial intelligence by ChatGPT fever, we can say fever because everybody was talking about that, and the boundaries, the limits, and also the ethical issues related. So we have to face those ethical issues. We have to confront their potentialities, and also the way how those issues would lead us in a certain way to this main assumption that can be also a very universal claim in relation to artificial intelligence, that artificial intelligence, when ethical, has to be also inclusive, diverse, and fostering gender equality in all those main basic concrete experiences of what you have, what we have behind. So basically, I have just few slides just to guide this those topics I mentioned. The idea is just to give you all this outline of issues that I also made to understand what is behind Harmonizing Ethical AI and why we are focusing on global perspectives, and also how domestic legal experiences, legal systems will inspire also international level. In beginning with the context, we know that, for example, the rise of AI and its global application brought many concerns to the international community, particularly international lawyers, which were just focusing on numbers and global reports and indicators, stating the current use of AI. For example, in Brazil, which is the fourth largest digital community in the globe, we have 41% of global corporations or companies acting in Brazil using some kind of artificial intelligence. That was in 2002. We are now taking the floor to understand what is behind the new numbers, new figures of this. In Brazil, just solely Brazil, we will exceed 1 billion of AI investments by 2023, 2024, which is a very huge number in comparison with other regions in the globe as well. But of course, when you're talking about ethical issues arising in this context, we, as I mentioned, have to focus on how AI may reflect prejudices and stereotypes that still exist in society, that could be very harmful to minorities, to LGBT, to Black people, to indigenous communities, to women. And that's why it's important to understand how the full picture of AI could in some way reflect those prejudices, stereotypes, cliches, and also ways of oppressions of those communities. It's very important the way how AI could reflect, reproduce, replicate, and perpetuate those kind of oppressions over our bodies, oppressions over our lives, oppressions over our souls. And saying to that is a very holistic approach when we are talking about discrimination, bias in AI, and how they can be reproduced in different groups of societies when AI is developed, implemented, and used by groups. So basically, this has a origin, which is the algorithm bias, because algorithm is the main, I would say, the raw material for computer engineering, informatics, and the way how the AI applications are designed. So basically, they will also reproduce the same way how data sets are structured. Data sets are structured in laboratories, in very, prominent research centers, particularly in different regions in the globe, but more intensively in the United States and very recently in China. And they can, of course, in this very geopolitics of artificial intelligence, influence our lives as well, in the way how data sets are structured, the way how they fail in not observing or capturing the concerns related or goals related to diversity, inclusion, and gender equality. That's why it's so important. Why discrimination and the lack of diversity in data sets are also result or outcome of how those data sets are structured. So there is a causal relation. It's not like action and reaction, but more a causal relation in between how data sets are structured, how those computer programs are trained, how artificial intelligence learns, and those sequences of acts will lead to the results that are necessarily and systematically unfair in terms of how those outcomes or results coming from the machine, the computer, AI applications will impact our lives. And this is what we are just discussing in the main issues. Examples of those cases are not lacking every day, because we can see, for example, the horrors, I would say, and also the outrageous outcomes coming from the emblematic Amazon case, where in 2018, it was found that Amazon created an AI hiring system called Victory. Victory was the name of the system. The algorithm was trained on the CVs, resumes of the company's employees, excluding gender information, technically to neutralize bias. But the algorithm quickly began rejecting women's resumes, leading to the company to quit the project. So Amazon noticed that the bias behind the algorithms which trained this Victory system, it was an autonomous or intelligent hiring system adopted by Amazon, that Amazon itself found that the CVs of women were being rejected. And this was also a very way how the company replied or contested the troubles caused by the hiring system, attributing the failure not to the AI, but to the lack of solidity of the data that were implemented into system. So which kind of data the computer programmers used to train and to design the AI application, basically reflecting the same biases and also discriminatory trends that affected women that were rejected in the outcomes of the hiring system. So of course, afterwards I will share any kind of description of those cases with you, but it's a very important aspect to understand. For example, the DOL A, which is another topic which has been very important. You see here in the bottom of the presentation, in the left side, DOA was also a very important case to understand how, for example, Black women in favelas in Brazil, I'm talking just a very good experience for Brazilian community, where this DOL A includes, when generating images, texts, and also audiovisual works style for using, for example, in presentations, we use pictures generated by AI in other works and so on. And then DOL A included guns in prompts about Black women. So when asking the AI to generate an image, the AI will produce a picture, for example, woman and guns. And then this AI will generate a Black woman in favelas in Rio using a gun. This is a kind of stereotype. The first outcome, the first result of generated by the AI when the user requests, for example, is a woman, Black woman using a gun. This is a very other aspect, this case. Or TikTok content recommendation algorithms leading to a more racist and misogynistic content. For example, media, and this has to be what they are just discussing in the last days, because we can find, for example, experiments in these TikTok algorithms stressing or emphasizing bias against women, also violence against women, and also some experiments on transphobia that the TikTok algorithm system recommended for extremists users. It means that TikTok content can generate extremist content online, and that can be reproduced and replicated everywhere. So it's another example where we are going to find any kind of this, but also many other systems. For example, they using machine learning to define e-scores in banking systems and social scoring as reported in China, for example, that Chinese central government is using the scoring systems to profilize social groups, and also to grant or to attribute grades to those particular social groups according to the social profiling, which has a very huge social impact in the community, no matter what is specific or which specific group we are talking about. So this is what we have. And so the reactions, because of course we have existing regulatory frameworks, international standards that are very important. Just mentioning the very important work of UNESCO, because UNESCO was actually the first of the international organizations that adopted the first global standard setting instrument in AI. This is already well known amongst international lawyers. Just because, for example, the UN General Assembly, by the resolution 72 and 73, didn't touch specifically AI issues, but established that the state and governments who would be achieving sustainable development by the means how rapid technology change could be controlled, and also both negative and positive aspects. But the technological change have to achieve those goals, particularly those attached to the sustainable development goals of the 2030 agenda. I will mention this quickly later, but this is a very important aspect to make the comparison that UNESCO instruments were the first instruments to set those international standards dealing with AI, and after that other instruments were generated. And also we found many collaborations between UNESCO, the Inter-American Development Bank, and also UNESCO and other non-governmental organizations, which is also a very in the core of SDG 17, multi-stakeholder partnerships for the sustainable goals. This is also something very important in the work of how the organizations are doing. But it's important that justice and fairness in those non-discrimination goals coming from the international instruments are also focusing on the elimination of gender discrimination, that those instruments are focusing on the discrimination against women, which is very important because of the intersection or interplay between the UN Convention, UN Women's Convention, and also those instruments that are now adopted or being developed or being discussed across the globe, and also at national levels. If we go to European Union or Brazil and United States, Argentina, very other countries that I mentioned here, Chile, looking to my region. So there are many other countries that are involved to now with the development and the discussion of AI regulations at the national level. So we have I would say, a new federalism of international organizations covering AI topics. That's why this topic is transversal. The question is our question here in this webinar. The question is, to what extent those initiatives at global or national level are taking into account the existing legal framework, for example, in international law, for elimination of any kind of gender inequality, and also to eliminate the discrimination against women, thinking about the solid and sound basis that we have from the UN Convention. And also the UN Convention was very important because the UN Convention has been adopted by several countries, and countries implemented UN Convention on the elimination of discrimination against women within domestic legal systems. And this is a very important because there is a interaction between them. And basically the 2023 UNESCO recommendation on ethics artificial intelligence touched solely a broad notion of promotion and respect of human rights, human dignity, environmental sustainability, essential principles like transparency, accountability, and rule of law. They are very important, of course. In a second stage of the implementation of the UNESCO recommendations on ethics of artificial intelligence, recently adopted this year, 2023, my proposal is that UNESCO engage in I would say, exploratory work to better have an overview of the relationship between AI systems and also the ethical standards in AI systems, and also discrimination, bias, and also gender inequality, to use the negative words of that: discrimination, exclusion, and also gender inequality. So it's a very task to be, I would say, assigned to UNESCO and also UN system in order to check these balances, which are very important in this role of gap filling by international treaties, for example, using the UN Convention on Elimination of Discrimination of Women in this gap filling exercise in the interaction between treaties and recommendations, because treaties are hard law instruments and recommendations are soft law instruments because they don't have any consequence if not adopted, at least from the international legal standpoint. And to finish, the ultimate goal of seeking the centrality and equality, diversity, inclusion is also related to the way how national legal systems and international law will interact. And second, which is very important, if we look into that inclusion in AI regulation aims to ensure that all groups in society, regardless race, gender, ethnicity, or other characteristics, have equal access to the benefits of technology. Just recovering some of the concerns of the United Nations in the first resolutions adopted by the General Assembly of United Nations that just put in evidence or in spotlight the relationship between benefits of technology being distributed, disseminated, and shared about different groups, which is very important. And what's not going on today with artificial intelligence, because the way how artificial intelligence is developed, used, and implemented is unequal. This is a very important issue, because also few groups have a kind of literacy about what is artificial intelligence or what artificial intelligence is about. So it's still one unequal, I would say, an equal distribution of AI first, and also exclusionary aspect of using AI without any kind of AI literacy, not only digital literacy, but also AI literacy. So organizations will be taking, I would say, the stage in the next years to put this in discussion, because AI will not disappear from our lives. Just know, AI have been coexisting with us, human, for many years, many decades. They are populating all the regions of the globe. So this is a very important. Centrality and diversity and inclusion of AI regulation is an ethical issue. That's why harmonizing AI or ethical AI will require also the legislators, international drafters, international organizations to put the centrality of diversity and inclusion within the core of the norm setting, within the core of the regulatory patterns, talking about international and domestic legal systems. This is very important. So a pursuit of diversity and inclusion AI regulation is in line with fundamental human rights. It's important because this also intersection between AI regulations and human rights. This is, of course, the basis of what is about the existing instruments in international and domestic laws focus on reducing and eliminating discrimination against women, oppression, violence, and other kind of aspects that is behind discrimination, misogynistic behavior, and also violence. So everything that is within this idea. Imagine if just a Black woman wearing a gun or using a gun is the stereotype of exclusionary approach of how women are oppressed and also subject to certain stereotypes. And this is what is behind. So we have to look at that, and we can train also. I would just recommend a exercise. Go to Google search engine and then just put family or happy family. And then if we go to search engine happy family, you see what Google brings of the images of a happy family. And then after that exercise, a very simple exercise in the Google search engine with what is behind a happy family, and then you see what is the stereotype that the algorithm outcomes would give you about what is a happy family. So, and then you tell me what is a happy family about in view of or in the opinion of the algorithm, the bias, and also the computer program. So this is what we have to focus. To finish, which is the future, that there must be a compromise between international organizations, that data used to build algorithm is fair and inclusive, that we have to encourage diversity in workforce, particularly in the case of women, and that this diversity in the workforce will also be reflected in the way how artificial intelligence is trained, is developed, is trained, and how the artificial intelligence systems learn. So it's very important. Implement human oversight and review mechanisms, also to ensure that, for example, in the case of the enforcement of human women's rights, in the case of the convention, United Nations conventions, this human oversight is indispensable. And the role of international organizations to promote the debate on this topic and ensure that countries, particularly any region in the globe or every single region in the globe will comply with the international standards, and also that law enforcement agencies and organizations within domestic level will take the floor to engage themselves to work in the complete monitoring and also enforcement of existing law, and also to be engaged in the way how new laws and regulations are developed, because this kind of also work in involvement of distinct groups, it's very important in what we are talking. And of course, that this exercise is also focused on achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, 5, which is related to gender equity, 10, which is related to reducing inequalities, 16, which is related to peace and justice, and 17, which is related to the multi-stakeholder partnerships or partnerships for the goals. So 5, 10, 16, and 17 are, I think, the most important sustainable development goals in Agenda 2030 to help us also in this task. This task is very important, that we are including in all this forum the gender equality issues, non-discrimination against minorities and marginalized communities, which, by the way, are already subject to stereotypes, to bias. So if they are already under a kind of human layer of or a human impact on the stereotypes and also on the discrimination and bias, so the AI will be biased and discriminatory. And also to focus on how AI will affect vulnerable communities, marginalized communities, because this is another task for the future. Of course, it's not topic of specifically of this panel today, but I would like to shed some light also on those issues because they are very important. And now finishing, thank you so much. I extrapolated the time, but I hope that we have discussions ahead.
Thank you so much, Professor Fabricio. I mean, a lot of takeaways there, and a lot of points really to consider. Actually, some months ago during the UNCSW, I was able to attend also this presentation by Joy Bolamwini. As you know, she had this research on the coded gaze. And as you said, it's really on the discussion on how it is very important that women and all genders are included, not only in using the technology, but also even in the conceptualization, in the ideation stage. So I like very much at the end your call for, of course, SDG 5, 10, 16, and 17, but also making sure that we are inclusive, we are consultative, and rights-based. So we are now transitioning to a highly anticipated segment of our webinar, the reactions and insights from our distinguished reactors to our keynote speaker. And each reactor brings a wealth of knowledge and unique perspective that are, of course, invaluable to our discussion today on harmonizing ethical AI, especially in the context of women's empowerment and gender equality. So I want to introduce them now and invite them to the room. If our colleague could also pin them so that we can all see them as well. I invite Ms. Larissa DeLucca, panelist from Young BPW Brazil, Avipsa Prasai, a panelist also from Young BPW, but this time from Nepal, and Kelly Tallon Franklin, a panelist from BPW Canada. Before we proceed, I would like to kindly remind our reactors to keep their comments brief and focused. This will ensure that we can hear from all of our esteemed panelists and allow time, of course, for a rich and diverse exchange of ideas. We would like to bring back, of course, later on Fabricio together with you so that we can have a richer exchange. So we are, of course, very eager to hear your reflections, critiques, and expansions on the topics discussed, especially on the work that you are doing on the ground. And all of you are working incredibly in spaces where there is also stigmatization, there is also discrimination, and of course the AI is very, very important there, but we have to make sure that it is used in the right way. So your contributions are crucial in shaping a more nuanced understanding of the challenges and opportunities at the intersection of AI in ethics as well. So thank you in advance for your valuable insights and for adhering to the time allocated for you. So let's continue this enlightening discussion. I would like to welcome now Larissa DeLucca. Your thoughts, please. Thank you.
Thank you for the inviting, and I'm so happy for talking about this topic because it's my topic of life now. Everyone, I think, it's also living in a world that every side that we turn, someone is talking about AI. And I hear a lot about people fears, like AI will take our jobs away, AI will change our life forever. But for me, I think it's a one a one-way path. There is no turning back from this point of that we are living now. We are already being controlled, and nothing is random in our lives. Every advertising that we see on socials, that's not random, that's careful planned and planted from an AI, and we are tended to click because they know us better than ourselves. Maybe they know when we are sad and we are looking for comfort things, comfort food, comfort content. They know when we are happy and when share things with our friends. So we are constantly being monitored and controlled by AI. And on the other hand, not only companies make a profit and are interested with this, but also governments, because they can do a lot with all of this data that AI is generating every single day. As an activist and also person who studies about law and also tech, I'm deeply concerned about this, because we are seeing now a decrease of human possibility of choose things properly, because we live in bubbles. Everything we see and do what's unique from our perspective of the world. So we cannot see the other people point of views anymore, because we are living just in our own point of view. And we are doing this for so long now that we forgot how it's to live in a free world, to have free will and free choice.
In Brazil, we have a phrase for this, and I want to share with you, because it's like, if you run, the monster will find you. And if you stay quiet, the monster will eat you. There's no turning back. And I want to ask our dear panelist here, how we can go forward by using human thinking and human emotions to find options. What should we do? Because if we just stay quiet and go with the flow, we are being controlled and giving up of our free will. But we have not so many options. We need to create them now. And I'll be really quick, but if we can chat anymore, I'll be here.
Thank you so much, Larissa, for that. There's a question, of course, for you, Professor Fabricio, but in the interest of time, I'd like to go through all of our panelists, and then we can have a more, inclusive discussion as well, bringing together all the other voices. So now, thank you so much. By the way, Larissa, I'd like to now call Avipsa Prasai. She is joining us all the way from one of the beautiful mountains of Nepal. Avipsa, could you please join us and give us your thoughts as well? Thank you.
Joining you from the heart of Pugmuche, Solukhumbu district, where the majestic Mount Everest stands tall, I bring insights that resonate deeply with technological gap prevalent among diverse communities in Nepal. Namaste, I'm Avipsa Prasai, a young BPW member from Nepal. As an IT student, my journey has been one of the immersion in the world of IT, bridging gaps between technology and remote communities while navigating the promises and threats of AI. I stand at an intersection of excitement and apprehension, a phase where promises and pearls of AI demands our collective attention. In Nepal, the disparities in technological knowledge is very stark. Urban areas thrive with technological knowledge advancement, whereas rural areas face connectivity challenges, let alone the access to AI education. Educating children here in Pugmuche on IT for a month has been an humbling experience, witnessing their enthusiasm to embrace technology. And then despite the limitations, that has highlighted immense potential of AI that lies dormant due to technological gap. I've witnessed firsthand both wonders and worries that accompany with AI's expansion. Working closely with AI's technologies has been a fascinating journey, from leveraging its capability to enhance efficiency to educating people about its marvels. I've seen its power to uplift and transform. However, this journey lies a fear, the fear of AI replacing human roles, including my own. The fear of job displacement not, looms just not for myself, but countless individuals in various sectors. Yet, within this fear lies recognition of AI's incredible potential. Its ability to transform education, healthcare, economies, and all the other sectors is unparalleled. However, this potential is accompanied by ethical dilemmas and risk that demands our attention. Diversity, inclusion, regulatory frameworks discussed today stands as the guiding beacons in our pursuit of ethical AI, infusing diverse perspective into AI's development, advocating for inclusive AI frameworks are crucial steps towards mitigating biasness and ensuring fairness. Furthermore, harmonizing international laws to govern AI's ethical deployment is paramount in safeguarding human rights and addressing ethical quandaries it possesses. So, from the foothills of Mount Everest, I echo the sentiment that AI holds both promises and pearls. As we navigate through this terrain, let us pledge to harness AI's power responsibly. Let us bridge the technological gap, ensuring that every corner of the world has equitable access to AI education and opportunity. Indeed, together we must craft a future where AI is the force for progress, where its promises are realized, threats are mitigated through ethical frameworks that uphold the values of diversity, inclusion, and human rights. Ultimately, as we traverse to the evolving landscape of AI, the question that resonates remains. Do we yield to allure AI's limitless potential, or do we force a path that safeguards our humanity while embracing innovation? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Avipsa. That was a really beautiful explanation about, especially from your perspective. On one hand, you have, of course, your concerns, but at the same time, you are open to embracing this. I actually see a parallel between Mount Everest, the mighty Mount Everest, and AI, because climbers, of course, to Mount Everest must adapt to the changing conditions of this big mountain, but also there is in AI, there is this constant cycle of learning and adapting. So it's more or less the same, I think. So thank you so much for your thoughts. We'll take you backstage for now, but we'll bring you back in at this moment. I'd like to invite somebody I very much admire, and she knows that because of her work, and also because of her spirit. And it is this spirit that is driving a lot of inspirational, and really change making. This woman is really changing a lot of lives, and I bring her here on AI, but definitely also a discussion on humanity. So Kelly, thank you so much for joining us. You've been at the intersections of these discussions for quite some time. Your thoughts, please.
Thank you. And so for the sake of time, I've written most of my thoughts while listening to Professor Fabricio and my colleagues. I want to say, first of all, that I stand among great persons with BPW and those colleagues in academia. So it's a shared respect. Thank you, Dr. Jenny. But I'm glad to inspire aging population participation. And just hearing that things are in good hands as we're carefully developing and deploying algorithms in order to prevent existing biases that will lead to fair and ethical treatments. The current biases are built into a regulatory framework. There are claims out there that AI outperforms human sophisticated thinking and reasoning, but it's funny how these research projects always come from stocks, careers, platforms, tech development companies, or anyone specializing. I just believe that AI decision makers need not only be the investor dollars, but ourselves put into leadership positions. And although a beneficial tool, there's been many cases of machine learning that has shown biases, not only due to the algorithms, but due to the lack of regulatory oversight in the technology training, including classifications and scoring systems that Professor Fabricio touched on. Reversing these existing biases of unfair targeting, profiling groups, and having transparent regulating with diverse representational data sets, audits, ongoing evaluations could rectify these biases. And the ethical guidelines will ensure accountability for these things in the future, specifically in my work in anti-human trafficking, gender-based violence, law enforcement, intersectional safety globally, and even in conflicts of war, and journalism honesty. Legislative oversight is further necessary to deal with these regulatory frameworks. I remember speaking last year at UNCSW 67, where we were asked the question, and in my response, I said, we are trying to deal with this. The horse is already out of the barn, and we're trying to saddle it. So when we review the deficits in areas of things like facial recognition biases and scoring that happens that Professor Fabricio touched on with ethnicity, age, sex, skin color, they're really good starting points for ethical practice development. And gatekeeping of the content based on accurate, proven systems of age verification are vitally important to me in the prevention of child pornography and child sex trafficking. AI is creating porn at an alarming rate. These protections are needed to contain human regulatory oversight with power that will decide AI-generated advice in matters of law and regulation. It's the humans that need to make these regulatory decisions, not the AI data itself driving the data. So things like legal frameworks for migrant controls to access global jobs are absolutely necessary. The migration regimes right now with crowd workers and the gig economy have strongholds on migrant labor forces that are forced to accept unstable, precarious positions, specifically geared towards the exploitation of migrants through algorithm management of profiteers, strategists, and financiers. To add an intersectional bias, they also have suffered in areas of freedom of faith and ethnicity in their considerations and medical care. To finish a commentary and to support what we've all talked about today, balancing technological advancements with human judgment is vital to avoid our over-reliance on AI while having a good relationship with it. To maintain the ethical decision-making, as Professor Fabricio also alluded to, that it comes from local communities and is upscaled into our governments. Those will inspire local interactive starting points where the community will then be involved. This will ensure, as it has in my work and my previous listening to Professor Fabricio as an ISTAT cohort under ODIHR and OSCE, that we will have data privacy, that will be able to keep confidential and sensitive information in that regard. We can address the biases to prevent discrimination, and we can set the frameworks for transparency and accountability in all levels of AI systems, institutions, and structures. These transparent legal and regulatory frameworks and guidelines that will be defined as permissible use of AI through the conventions we already have and can tap into. It'll include collection, storing, sharing, privacy, human rights, international collaboration, cooperation with governments and organizations and stakeholders. This is vital, and it's the comprehensive framework that will transcend the borders and harness us all as responsible. The emerging natural language progression that is not talked about very often is a computer vision enhancement. We need to enable also regulatory information and standards in this. So the visual cues, especially in law enforcement or person recognition, has a standard in imaging. And then educating and empowering the stakeholders as the comprehensive approach needs to be included in the legislation and built into community capacities. Professor Fabricio challenges us to pursue centrality of diversity inclusion to create a more just and equitable world with AI. So the responsibility is charged and challenged with us. I want to extend my gratitude to all on this live webinar and the future viewing audience that will benefit from this, to our international business and professional woman president, our first VP host, the panel, our esteemed keynote experts, and Dr. Fabricio. He has reminded us, as I do now, that it is no more time-consuming to listen to human advice than AI advisement to make significant ethical progress beneficial and just. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Choi Ting, for those beautiful insights. I bring back again Professor Fabricio to react on his own on the many things that have been said by our excellent panelists. And really, thank you so much for all of these ideas and thoughts. And I'm sure these are also actionable actions that hopefully will also bring us further. So Professor Fabricio, your thoughts, please.
Thank you, Dr. Jane. Thank you a lot, Kelly. Thank you a lot, Avipsa and Larissa, for the kind comments that you made. They are very important for reacting what we discussed today. So I would just remember everybody in the audience that the international community is committed with very high human rights international standards that were like coexisting with us before artificial intelligence. So let's talk about the coexistence between the human rights systems that we know, apart from any kind of inequalities that the system already created as well, and also the time we started coexisting with artificial intelligence. So human rights were like born and conceived in a world of the illumination of ideas, and also how a human-centered approach would be also included in the way how institutions, legal frameworks would operate. And this was not only about the independence of the United States or the French Revolution that inspired the beginning of the generations or dimensions of human rights that we know, but the fact that the human, at least, centrality or attributes were indeed thought by the system when the human rights systems were conceived. Where they came from, this is very important, where it came from, where the human rights system stemmed, the origins. This is very important to recover those issues, because human centrality was about it. And this is the main idea. When Professor Antonio Cansado Trindade, a former judge of the International Court of Justice and also former judge of the International Court, the Inter-American Court of Human Rights, mentioned what would be the law of humankind. That was the law of humankind would be based on all the development and achievements made by international human rights regime, and our international human rights law also is presented in our lives. So it's very difficult for international lawyers not be concerned about international human rights norms and also how those regimes would interact. And then putting this question to the comments made by Larissa, which are very important in terms of how this human centrality will recover the international legal framework, and also the human centrality will be also guiding legislators and also international drafters in this work. But also human centrality has to do with the way how AI is developed. Why I'm talking that? Because if we go to the most large corporations now developing AI solutions, or even in the most prominent research institutes, MIT, those in the Silicon Valley and so on, in China, the question is, how many engineers, scientists, are women, are LGBT, are Black, are indigenous, are related to minorities? I even, you know, representatives for elderly people, which are also subject to bias, discrimination by the use of AI. And so it's something very important to recover this human centrality, not only in law, in the human laws enforcement within the AI, as one of the core issues of harmonizing ethical AI, but also to including those concerns prior to the development and the implementation of AI systems. And it's something that we are missing, you know, because with that, the AI and also machine learning is monocultural, excludent, or exclusionary, and only focused in a particular group, region, and I would say cognitive epistemology community, which is the one, for example, MIT, Silicon Valley, I don't know more. I'm now like more gathering information and I would say studying deep the issues related to the way how the state actors are using AI to control populations, like China is doing now with this scoring system, and how this also is related to personal integrity and privacy related to criminal enforcement programs who are using AI and also, you know, surveillance in relation to those target groups, which are, by the way, marginalized, and also communities that are also involved, are also target of those initiatives. And this is something that we have to focus in, and it starts coming also to Avipsa comments on that, the way how we are touched by technology and how technology in terms of AI frame our lives, because we are here in very different generations. Not only I'm talking about age or gender or region and so on, but I'm talking about the way how those different generations, Larissa, Avipsa, are integrated with technology. Like you two are good examples of digital natives. I'm not a digital native. Kelly is not also a digital native. It's just about one or two generations. Our president very briefly explained about also the relationship with the technology, new technologies and AI and so on. This is about also a generative generation issue, which is very important for us. But we cannot simply assume that the older or new generations would have the same level of knowledge, first of all, and the second, that they wouldn't have the same concerns. They do have the same concerns. If they didn't have the same concerns, we wouldn't be here. And this is a very important topic, why we are, you know, mingling here in a Saturday to discuss this very fascinating topic. Not very fascinating because it's now, it's about now and what is coming next, right? Otherwise, we cannot simply miss the past. And just to finish to Kelly comments, which are also important in this particular aspect, looking into very concrete models, so we can go for a more pervasive ethical guidance in the way how AI is developed, conceived, developed. We say the inception of AI or designing of AI systems, the implementation and use. So the life cycle of AI systems, let's put it so, the life cycle of AI systems have to be engaged with human judgment, assessment. This is a very important aspect, because it's something that I'm just discussing in Brazil in a very different project related to the use of AI in adjudicatory systems. So how judges, arbitrators will be using AI, and how the AI or the arbitrator judge robot will replace the human judgment in those things. So it's also a very important aspect that we have to take into account in the life cycle of AI, and understand that AI cannot replace, but has to be instrumental. If so instrumental, can generate benefits. But if just replace what we have of human attributes, or simply clone our human attributes, sometimes expropriating our human attributes, dispossessing our human attributes, to use a very beautiful word that Shoshana Zuboff in the surveillance capitalism work used by the platforms, dispossessing our data in the benefit of generating new products, services, and solutions and digital markets, what happened with NEC. And now we are talking about how AI developers are dispossessing our humanity. And this is a very important aspect that I would to make pair with the very good arguments of Shoshana Zuboff. And I'm sure also that Shoshana Zuboff, hopefully in the next years, will write about it as well. Because I won't be, you know, I won't be quiet unless Shoshana Zuboff is writing something about that, because I know that she's the best, probably most, you know, trained to talk about in this connection. And this will be a very, you know, the perfect storm in relation to AI debate of that, because so much enthusiasm of everybody, fuzzy, busy words everybody's talking about. There's so much ado for nothing in relation to AI that we couldn't be able to unfold, to talk about, and also what's coming next to make those differences in the way AI. And to finish,
thank you. Yes. Sorry, Professor Fabricio. I mean, these are, you've given really fundamental and very critical answers, you know, to the many concerns of course of our panelists that were raised by our panelists. But also, I wanted to bring, because the chat, well, the Q&A box is getting really exciting. So I want to make sure that our participants are included as well in this discussion. And I start with a greeting from our sisters from Pan-Pacific and Southeast Asia Women's Association, from Kesini Chularat, who is the main representative to the United Nations. She says, this topic is absolutely fascinating and important to global understanding. Would this topic be considered to share with CSW 68? ? You will see, and I think we can work on that together with our sisters as well. Thank you to the panelists, she says, for the great knowledge and contributions. Thank you so much for joining us. There are some questions here, and perhaps Professor Fabricio, you'd like to bundle it together in the interest of time. You have a question from Carolyn Savage. Would note also that cover letters for jobs, the applicants are using AI to write these letters. Do you think that with AI use that there should be a postscript to say it has been produced this way? The same with any other reports being prepared. For example, when you send emails out by your phone or Outlook, there is a note at the bottom of the email to say this. That's really interesting and a very interesting question. And also from Dr. Mina Karna, how is AI helpful for gender equality? Please explain in simple words, as we don't know the technical meaning of AI. Is a very good point. We have to make sure that it's more and more inclusive, of course. And Daniela Suarez de Souza also has a question. She says, of course, a good morning to everyone. Taking into consideration the difficulties of implementing legislation based on UN treaties, and also how capitalistic expectations are powerful among legislators and the lack of sanctions against countries that do not respect such treaties, wouldn't it be more propitious to advance the conversation about ethics and AI towards representation in companies and also technology literacy? Wow, that's a really, really very, very important question. A lot of actions that needed to be done there. Also, our panelist has, Larissa, there are questions directly to you. I don't know if you'd like to answer it or type your answer inside in the interest of time, but I just wanted to read it for you. Larissa, how do you think AI can contribute to a sexualized view of Brazilian women? And another question for you, how do you think AI can contribute to the inclusion of people on the autism spectrum? Very, very interesting question. Neurodivergent people in the workplace. Again, another question for you, how the autistic and neurodiversities community has been affected by the AI bias. And two more questions here. I would like to ask especially Fabricio and Larissa, but of course anyone is welcome to share their other points. Is there a Brazilian initiative on including neurodivergent people on the development of the AI regulations? My concern is mainly based on being an ADHD person, and I feel every day the impacts of AI in my everyday decisions. Very, very important question. And of course, we have a BPW, one of our most active BPW members, very much connected to UNESCO, Marie-Claude Machon Honore. Sorry, Marie-Claude, if I'm mispronouncing your family name, but very welcome. I'm very happy to have you here. We also have to take into account current teachers training in AI and ethics and future ones. So the Q&A, of course, Professor Fabricio, you can say is getting very, very exciting, but we are running out of time. We have 3 minutes before the close of this session. So I'll give it to you. And Larissa, I will give you also some seconds if you'd like, but please, Professor Fabricio, the room is yours.
Yes, very shortly. So about those questions, I think I can just go back in the discussions of the CVs and the drafting of CVs and also applications by the use of AI. And of course, today we have already AI tools to unfold and disclose what has been produced by AI. So even in the scholarly papers, for example, I tested amongst the students like papers, end semesters papers and so on. And I just found one example in a group of 35. So the app allowed me to get into what was produced by AI. And we saw that the language is not the same of what the student is able to write. So we know how this is done. This is a very important. So the artificially created CV also can bear some information that is not true about the candidate, about the person which is depicted or described in the resume. And so it's a very important aspect. Myself, I tested the ChatGPT, for example, for a legal opinion in a particular matter, and I found I invented case law that never existed, and also articles of acts and rules that are also not into force in Brazil. So once again, monocultural, excludent AI, and more than that, can be also a trickery because of the way how this AI will create something that didn't exist. So it's the same to depict a candidate that didn't exist. That's not a person. So basically something like that, you know. But go back after we share the cases, for example, the Amazon victory case, which is very, I would say, inspiring in the way how they did, and to understand a little bit more on that. I think I will give also Larissa the floor for the question on the women. Yes, Brazilian women.
Thank you. Thank you. Larissa, the room is yours. Thank you.
Yeah, as an activist, it's quite common for me here this kind of answer this kind of questions, because I am a part of the neurodivergent. I'm autist, level 1 of support, and this doesn't makes harder for me be part of groups of work, but still I do feel that connect sometimes it's harder. And I think to avoid this kind of issue in a level of a major level, as AI level, as a bias or something like this, we need to bring everyone together for the conversation and work together on solutions and work together on AI and development. Because if we have always the same point of view on the construction, we will get always the same result. So to change anything, we just need to bring people together and break all of these barriers that make us always feel that like we need people exactly the same of ourselves, like mirrors. We doesn't need more mirrors, we need more people to get to know and to start and go further on conversation and on studies. So thank you so much for the time to complete this answer, because it's important to me. And thank you for all of you that sent this kind of questions.
Thank you so much. Indeed, that was an incredible session, if I may so myself. And as we draw this enlightening webinar to close, of course, we thank our speaker. Thank you, Professor Bertini, Pasquot, Polido, for your illuminating keynote speech. And of course, our esteemed reactors, Larissa, DeLucca, Avipsa, Prasai, Kelly, Tallon, Franklin, for their insightful contributions and perspectives. And Dr. Catherine Boshart, our president, and Dr. Chularat Israngkool na Ayutthaya, Vice President UN of BPW. To our audience, of course, thank you for your active participation and your engaging questions. This curiosity of yours and your eagerness to learn and contribute make events like this not just possible, but of course, profoundly impactful. So thank you so much for joining us. Until we meet again, I encourage all of you to reflect on today's discussions and consider how each of us can play a role. I think that's one of the most important things. How can we play a role in shaping a future where technology, where AI is a force for good, an enabler of equality, and of course, a champion of human dignity. So thank you once again for joining us. And I wish you all a wonderful day, a wonderful evening filled with new ideas, and of course, a renewed motivation to make a positive difference in the world. So stay safe, stay inspired to drive change. Goodbye, and until we meet again. Thank you, everybody.